Okay, here we have another one of the Alien Planet of the Week episodes, where Picard and his crew go to a planet for reasons and have to figure out what to do about the alien planet. Now, this episode is noteworthy for being one of the times when Picard invokes the Prime Directive as an excuse to wash his hands of the idiocy of the alien of the week. And while it's understandable why he wants to be like, I'm not doing anything with this, it is an odd reason to invoke the Prime Directive because of the fact that surely it's not the only regulation that's applicable to this. I mean, yes, you are applying for Federation membership. However, you are not a Federation member world, and this is strictly an internal matter of your own politics and what have you from inside your culture. Why on earth would Picard choose a side? Doesn't make sense at all. And yes, that does make sense when phrased as a Prime Directive violation. However, at the same time, it also, there's several other ways you could run that with that, so, Anyways, aside from that, what are the aspects of this episode that make it interesting? One, the plot hook for this episode is that a planet, Angosia, it has applied to join the Federation. And Picard has gone to Angosia to examine their application and make commentary on it. It's not up to Picard to even make the final decision. He's collecting information for the people who do make the final decision. So it's not like Angosia's final application is even in Picard's hands. He's just one of several steps, because let's face it, the Federation takes membership very seriously. They don't want to just give people membership because they feel like it, to put it simply. So all Federation member worlds need to be carefully, I guess you could say, vetted for whether or not they are actually properly suitable as members of the Federation. And yeah, that's the entire episode. Figuring out what is wrong with the Angosian culture and why they shouldn't be Federation members. Yet, anyways. To be honest, this isn't the only time this happens in TNG. I can't think of any other series that actually had the main cast evaluating alien planets for Federation membership. The whole concept of worlds becoming Federation members is touched on, but it's not like Alien of the Week that you only see for a single episode. DS9 did it with the Bajorans. It's like the Bajorans weren't Federation members at the beginning or at the end. And the Cisco actually advised to the Bajoran leaders that they shouldn't apply for Federation membership yet, and that they should wait until after the Dominion War was over. His logic on that one seems to have been influenced by the prophets, but still, that was an arch, or a story arc that took seasons to play out completely. It wasn't a one and done single episode thing. Anyways, though, back to this. So, one of the things that is interesting about the Angosians is that the Angosians are not a single homeworld race. There is a long, long tradition in Star Trek of having an alien of the week where they have a single colony on their homeworld and nothing else. There has actually been a case of a warp-capable civilization that was stated to have a population of approximately 50,000. Not even million, thousand. And that was their homeworld. How? And a lot of alien planets are like seemingly like half unoccupied. Not so for Angosian, which is actually one of the good points of the episode. The Angosians, as they are defined in the episode, are a minor galactic power. As we see, they do have spaceships. Now, again, there's that whole thing. It's like, well, these Alien of the Week need to be a warp-capable civilization in order to be admissible as Federation members, or, you know, someone we're willing to talk to in the first place. Not even members, just so the bare minimum for the Federation to talk to them. Well, this is an Angosian ship. Now, the interesting thing with this is that the Angosians, as their big wrinkle, is what was referred to as the Tarsian Wars. And then they have Lunar 5, which is a space station. Lunar 5 is where they would keep their super soldiers when they weren't using the super soldiers for soldier stuff. And the thing is that while it is effectively a penal colony, it's more colony than prison. But again, it's that they're people who... Why are you just shoving them into a box? Why is that literally the only thing they're capable of? Anyway, so the Tarsian War, which is what the Super Soldier Project was created to end, and we don't even know what it was. Was it them fighting a different race in a different solar system? Was it an internal matter? If it was an internal matter, that would explain a lot of things with this, and why the Angosians have so much difficulty getting the veterans of the Tarsian War to reintegrate into society. Because if it was an external matter, why don't you just leave them on starships patrolling the perimeter of your empire? I mean, having soldiers patrolling the borders of your space, that's kind of what Starfleet does. Why don't the Angosians have an equivalent of Starfleet? However, it makes more sense if the Angosians were fighting an internal war. And that the reason why they're applying for Federation membership is that the current ruling body wants to cement their rule by joining the Federation, and thus making it so that internal strife won't result in them being deposed due to the Federation being involved with it. But that's just a guess on my part. If you're writing this as a GM, you could use a different approach to that if you wished. But it is an important aspect of this to consider, is that it was a major scale war. It is the reason why the Angosians created a super soldier program. And its legacy is also what crippled the Angosians' ability to join the Federation, is because of the fact that their culture is unstable. They are not able to simply say, yes, we all wish to join the Federation, because that was one of the things with the membership with the Federation, is that they're willing to be allies with small regional powers, like in one of the other episodes with the Kess and the Prit. The Kess and the Prit were, I'm not sure whether they're different species or not, but definitely different races on the same planet that had been fighting wars with each other for centuries. And it was basically like, it's like continent A versus continent B. And while one of them was the majority, they weren't sole ruler. And having their planet join as a Federation member was deemed to be impossible because of the fact that only one of the two continents wished to do so. The larger one, mind you, but still. Again, much like with the Angosians, that was a case where the local leaders were trying to use Federation membership to increase their own personal influence inside their current society. Which is, of course, the reason why Picard is like, you're probably not going to get received as Federation members in your current political status. Just gonna, write into my report the unstable nature of your society, and I doubt you're going to get accepted. He said something to that effect at the end of the episode, when he beamed back to his ship and left the Angosian homeworld in a state of civil war. Oh yeah. A full-on civil war got started at the end of this episode, and Picard just leaves. That's a lot like the episode with the Ornarans, is that the Ornarans and that other race that they were close neighbors with had a vampiric trading deal for a considerable period of time. That trading deal was about to break down, and the Ornarans wanted the Federation to assist them to prevent the trading deal from breaking down because the Ornarans thought they needed it to survive. Well, the Ornarans had reached the point where they no longer had the ability to repair their own starships. So Picard is like, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to abandon you to your fate. Which was a strange thing to do because he didn't bother telling them why he was leaving. He just used the Prime Directive as an excuse to walk out and just, left them to their fate. Were the Ornarans going to die? Probably not. At least not most of them. Some of them would probably die. I have to wonder if the Ornarans is equivalent of antimatter reactors, because the style of warp drive that the Ornarans were using on their cargo ships did seem to be a matter-antimatter reactor, and having matter-antimatter reactors fail because of improper maintenance planet side is something that might have happened in the fallout of Picard's leaving them to their own devices. Anyways, so you as a playing a TTRPG, if you're going to use the Ornaran or Angosians, you could do a later point in this series of events, because we know that various members of the Angosian population do in fact have quite effective technical skills. Oh, also, that reminds me. The single most interesting plot device that happens in here is the Angosians apparently understand transporter technology well enough to be able to to counteract it on a personal level. How exactly that works isn't explained, but Dinar did in fact manage to escape a transporter lock. Highly noteworthy as a plot device you could throw in as part of an episode, because of the fact that this isn't something most races are ever seen doing. Most. Anyway, though, Dinar's abilities as a super soldier really aren't that particularly interesting. He's not an augment. He's someone who is trained to be extremely skilled in a combat specific way. And I still find it hard to understand how you can have someone who is that smart, creative, and good at combat be considered to be fundamentally unsuitable for living in daily life. And oh wait, they're actually running a prison colony on an orbital starbase, and their colony is actually running just fine. Again, this seems to me one of those things where the Angosian government decided that they wanted to ostracize them, and that the whole thing is like, oh, they can't properly reintegrate into society, is actually just an excuse. But again, that's my take on it. If you're doing this as a GM, there are different approaches that you could take, presumably. And also, we haven't actually established whether or not this was a civil war or a war with an outside force. However, the relatively small Ornaran or Angosian Space Force is inconsistent with a race that recently fought a proper war with another empire. The state of their military makes more sense as a race that was fighting a civil war. But again, stealth technology of some sort is an Angosian thing. And again, you have this guy who has somehow has the ability to evade a target lock from a transporter beam. That is a neat trick. And anyway, so other than this is actually one of those things where I like the idea of having players evaluate a minor galactic power for Federation membership. Problem is, I wouldn't use an existing race for that. I would make up a new one. Or take a race that is historically not a Federation member and write them as having decided they wish to join. Granted, some minor power, like say the Acamarians, for example. The Acamarians are a great example of this, because warp-capable civilization have a civilization that genuinely has a space fleet. Granted, it's a small, crappy one, but they do have one. And the Acamarians did, in fact, have a territory on the galactic scale. They didn't just have their own homeworld, although one of the plot points was shrinking the size of that territory for reasons that didn't make sense. At any rate, as a GM, having the Acamarians decide to apply for Federation membership, it's a possibility. One of the other interesting quirks with that particular thing is that seemingly the Federation has a rule that it has to be everyone in that race making the decision, not just a colony or a part of a planet, or actually even as an entire solar system. this is actually a plot point that's, okay, technically it doesn't happen in the TV series, but in the Path to 2409 thing for Star Trek Online, one of the Romulan colonies, as a result of the fallout of the Romulan Civil War following the destruction of Romulus by the Hobus disaster, one of the Romulan colony worlds decided that they would choose option C. They would choose to side with neither of the warring factions in the Romulan Civil War and instead apply for Federation membership, which would mean everyone in the entire solar system was on board with this application. The Federation denied it because they're Romulans and solely because of the fact that it's Romulans doing it. But again, is that given different circumstances, maybe possibly that would have gone differently because it's Romulans in a Romulan Civil War. Are we sure it's not just a trick? I mean, you could use that as the reason why the Federation declined that one. Again, though, it's one of those things where ultimately it's up to you how you want to do it, and there's multiple options here. The majority of this, though, is actually just talking to a single super soldier guy. So you writing a mission, the majority of the actual episode is not something you're actually going to play through. Certain of the basic framework elements are great for plot hook, like the whole oh, we want you to evaluate a potential Federation member to determine whether they're actually valid as a member. That is a great plot hook for an episode. And doing an episode that has to do with the Angosians is actually a great idea because the Angosians are a large enough galactic power that you have reason to care about their existence. But they're not like a direct threat to the Federation. They're not even hostile. However, you know, some other plot point, because they're a rather militaristic society. Maybe they're fighting Orion pirates or something. Who knows? You know, so many ideas. At any rate. Oh, also, that's actually another interesting thing, is that their spacecraft having detection evasion capabilities without having cloaks. That's another interesting thing, because they do actually in this episode go into a decent amount of detail about or Angosian technology. It's not super deep, but it's deep enough that you actually do get a feel for their general capabilities. And this, being described as a shuttle, tells you that they do actually have the ability to make things that are a heck of a lot bigger than that. This isn't a warp-capable vessel, because this was actually just something that was meant to take people to and from that orbiting satellite to the planet. It's not meant to leave the system. But they do have things that are. We just don't see them in the episode. At any rate, I think that's about enough for this. Pretty sure I covered everything now. See you next time.